Hello, hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Happy office hours. I have Kierra Woodard here with me today. We're going to go over some really awesome productivity tips and how to, I don't know, make yourself more sane in the craziness that is every day.
Mhm.
So we're just going to give everybody, a minute or two to join before we jump in and get started. Let's see, it's a beautiful day here in Denver, Colorado, just like it always is on Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah.
Kira, how is it where you are?
I'm in Texas in the Houston area, and it feels lovely outside today.
Nice, nice. Yeah, it was a little cold here this morning, but I think on Saturday it's supposed to be like 83, which is like a little hot for me. And I guess it's May now, so I don't know how that happened. Um,
Mhm.
May 83 is okay. I thought it was still April, but I don't know. Time is fleeting, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
in the Texas summer, 83 degrees is like perfect weather.
right, right, yeah. And I don't know. I've never been to Texas, so I don't know how the humidity is there, but in Colorado there isn't any. It's very dry. So like every temperature feels amazing unless you're like sitting directly in the sun, and then it is too hot most of the time. Even when it's
Mhm.
like 40 degrees, if you're in the sun, you're cooking. So
Hmm, interesting.
we're closer to the sun. There's less atmosphere. It's bright. It's hot. You
I
get
see that.
sunburn in a minute. So um let's see. It is all right, cool. So I guess we can just jump in because we definitely want to make this session as productive as possible. You guys don't need to hear me talk about, my boring life any longer than you usually do. So so Kira, please tell us a little bit about you and your business, and then we can jump in.
Sure. So I started my business back in 2020
Mhm.
when everything was happening. I said, "This is the best time to start a business." I mean, why not? If
Why
if
not? It's perfect.
everything's going wild, businesses are all about chaos, so, that's what entrepreneurship's all about, but I always knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was just kinda biding my time to make the leap anyway. So that's what I did, and I started doing marketing services. Um and specifically focusing on like content marketing.
Mhm.
So, like in my previous job, one of the things that we struggled with a lot was um, I was a content writer, and we never really knew whether what we were writing was going to resonate with our audience.
Mhm. That's
Um,
tough.
yeah, it turns out to be a really common problem as I found through doing freelancing since then. So I set out to sort of solve that problem. And now I focus specifically on software startups, helping them figure out how to create content that resonates with their audience 100% of the time. So
Amazing.
that's
That's
what
a
I
good
do.
number.
Yes, 100%.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, and you have a podcast, is that right?
Yes, I just started my podcast a couple months ago. At this moment, it's actually pre-launch, so I've just been collecting episodes, and then I'm gonna start publishing them. Weekly is the plan, but don't hold me to that. Um, but yes. So
Awesome.
all of these tips like is comes from my experience trying to figure out how to start and grow a business over the past 2 years being self-employed. Um,
Amazing.
yeah, how do you focus and like manage your time?
Yeah, that is it's hard. And just to plug lately for a sec, I know that Kate did one of the podcast recordings, so really excited for that one. So once that one is released, everyone that's watching definitely tune into that. Well, awesome. Let's see. I sent around your website into the chat if anybody wants to take a closer look, see if maybe you can give them a hand. That would be fabulous. And then let's jump in and get started. So let's see. How can we get this started? So I guess something that I often have an issue with is it seems like there are not enough hours in the day to do all of the things that need to be done. So like, do you have any tips on on how to do that, how to create more time in your schedule. Tell me about that.
Okay. Well,
It's kind of broad, I know.
yeah, I think it has to do with clarifying what needs to be accomplished. So I'm gonna talk about this from the perspective of being a self-employed business owner.
Mhm.
So when there's not other people kind of defining what the objectives of the company are and you have to kind of do it yourself, I found that the easiest thing to do for me was to kind of like once a quarter write down what are the things that I want to accomplish over the next quarter. And I just kind of write that out in a month by month plan. So like, okay, April, May, June, here's like some simple bullet points on one page of like what I generally want to accomplish.
Mhm.
And then what I started doing recently was like estimating on a week by week basis, like what are the main activities that I am already committed to or that need to be done in order to accomplish each of those projects. So let's say I have a weekly call with like a freelancer or agency that I'm working with, and like I have a weekly call with a client. Um, I'll estimate like how much time each of those projects are taking up. So maybe my weekly call with the client is like an hour, and then I have to do like 2 or 3 hours of work before or after. Maybe I'm doing my podcast interviews like for part of my marketing, and then there's stuff I have to prepare before and after. So maybe that's taking up like 3 or 4 hours a week. So I listed all of those things out. And then I listed out all the projects that I wanted to accomplish. And I said, okay, well, one project is I want to do my podcast launch, and I need to get my podcast edited. So that's going to take up like 3 hours a week, or ideally, I want it to take up that much. And I've just listed out those time estimates for every project. And the funny thing was, like, I got like halfway through my list of projects. So this is a new thing I just started doing like a month or two ago. But I got halfway through my list of projects and then I ran out of hours in the week.
Yeah.
So I said I want to spend like let's start with the typical work week. So let's try to limit this to 40 hours a week. And then I ran out of hours before I got through all of the projects. And I said, wow, that's why I have an unfinished to-do list every single week. There are literally not enough hours to accomplish what I'm trying to do.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. There's
Yeah.
not. And then
Yeah.
how are you supposed to like sleep also? I'm like,
It's you choose whether or not to sleep regardless, and
yeah.
then some things end up unfinished. Yeah, so what I ended up doing was saying, okay, well, I think I need to move some of these projects because they're actually not going to get done. Either that or I have to invent more hours in a working week. And let's just try to get more efficient before we start adding hours.
Mhm.
So I literally cut out some of the activities that I didn't feel like I had to be doing. Like, okay, why is checking email taking me so long? Do I really need to do this thing over here? Like, okay, maybe I'll cut that out. Maybe I'll move this project to like next quarter.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so it's like reevaluating the importance of each thing and sort of redetermining the amount of time that you really need to spend on it. Because yeah, like I feel like a lot of times I'll spend like 3 hours doing emailing and going through my inbox, but then like, did I really need to do all of that right now, or could I have reallocated that time into something else that was a little bit more important?
right. Yeah. That's why I think it's useful to kind of look at these things on a macro level, like
Mhm.
and tie them back to your goals and then work backwards from like how many hours do I have and how many am I willing to allocate per project.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, once I did that, I plugged those into my calendar. So I
Mhm.
just created like a separate calendar that doesn't have like my actual meetings and just has the things I want to do. Like I wanted to um there was one project that I wanted to work on for like 5 hours a week. I think I was creating a CRM, which I'm more or less done with by now. Uh,
Amazing.
yeah. It's a very, very simple one person oriented CRM, but still, it took a while.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sure.
so I ended up putting like 5 hours on my calendar per week for that. And like I found a specific day and time that I was just going to work on that project. Um, and it's a separate calendar. So when I'm booking meetings, it doesn't show up. But when I'm just looking at my calendar, I can see like all of it. So
Mhm.
on a day by day basis, I'll just look at what's on my calendar and I'll say, okay, I have this meeting, I have this meeting. And then in between, I think today
Mhm.
was the day where I generally wanted to focus on that CRM project. So that's how I tend to allocate my days now. It's not perfect, but it's more in the direction of working on what I want to be working on. And it
Mhm.
helps kind of fight that overwhelmed of like, okay, there's like 50 things I need to do. Which one am I going to actually focus on accomplishing today?
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And have you ever, so something, this is a productivity tip of mine. So surprise everyone, I have one of my own. Um, have you ever heard of the Pomodoro technique?
Mhm.
Yeah, I had a boss that taught me that once, and I find that I don't do it often. And if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's where you set your like a timer for a certain amount of time. Usually it's like 20 to 30 minutes, and then you only focus on one specific task during that time. So emailing for 20 or 30 minutes, however long it is, and then you take a 5 to 10 minute break after that where you can check some other things, do your other things, then you do another chunk of 20 to 30 minutes with another task. Um, and I don't do it often because I find that my brain just sort of is all over the place all the time.
Mhm.
So I find that when I do really need to get certain specific things done, that is my go-to all the time. Do you
Mhm.
have you ever do you ever do that? Does it work for you?
Um, I think I tried the Pomodoro technique before, and I think it kind of worked, but I didn't stick to it. But there's actually an app. There's an app that makes this easier. So it's called Focusmate.com, and it's a
Nice.
lifesaver
Oh, cool.
because, yeah, essentially you book a session with like a stranger who's also working on something, and the session is either 50 minutes or 25 minutes.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
yeah, and you just check in at the beginning and end for like a minute, and then say, "I am going to work on this." They say, "I'm going to work on that," and then you just kind of mute your microphones and like work independently, and then check
Oh,
in at the
cool.
end.
Oh,
Yeah,
neat. Yeah, so it's kinda like an accountability thing, an
exactly.
accountability buddy.
An accountability buddy plus the Pomodoro technique,
Yeah,
so it
cool.
actually works.
Oh, man, yeah, I'll have to take a look at that. I sent it over in the chat, so anybody that's interested, take a look at that too.
Yeah.
So that is yeah, so scheduling things and really sticking to the schedule, that's a great tip. Now, what about speaking of emailing and that being a nightmare, tell us tell us school us on email and how to make that more manageable because I know I am not the only one and I know that Kate has a serious issue with email overwhelm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, some people I talk to, like, I'm starting a newsletter for my podcast, so, like, the emails are gonna go out, like, every time a new podcast is released,
Mhm.
and so I've been asking, like, several people, "Do you wanna get on the newsletter?" And, like, some of them say yes right away, and then some of them are like, "Well, I don't actually see anything in my inbox because there's, like, multiple thousand emails in there." So, they're just worried about it adding to the clutter.
I get
Yeah.
it.
But one thing that I started doing a while ago was that I started signing up for newsletters. Like, let's say you're browsing around on the internet and like you
Mhm.
want to sign up for some newsletter because it looks interesting, but you instead of giving out your regular email address that you use for everything, you can create like a separate email address and just sign up to all your newsletters using that.
Right.
Yeah, then everything just
Smart.
kinda gets filtered into there.
Mhm.
I'm actually using Proton Mail, so it lets you create multiple, email addresses for free, and then I just have one of them whenever an email goes to that, it just filters it to a folder. Uh,
Okay.
so you can do this in pretty much any of the major email, platforms.
Mhm.
There's a setting you can go into, and it's called filters. Um, and so you can set up a rule where if something comes to a specific email address, you can have it filtered into a folder and like you can check a box that says skip the inbox.
Nice.
So it doesn't go into your main inbox. You just see it in the folder.
That's
And then what
brilliant.
I'll do is like when I'm on a break or just like scrolling through my phone and I'm bored at some point and it's not during my working hours, then I'll like I'll say, what's on my phone that to distract me with? And then I'll open up my newsletters email folder, and then I'll scroll through those. So
Oh,
it's really
brilliant.
manageable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then you're actually looking at the newsletters that you wanted to look at and you signed up for, because I know that I'm super guilty of that.
Yeah.
Signing up and being like, yeah, man, can't wait to read this every week. And then there's like a million of those and it's hard. So
Yeah. Yeah, and it's much easier to kind of curate. So it ends
Mhm.
up being like just a short list of newsletters that you're actually interested in getting. And then if there's a newsletter that's going to your main email address, unsubscribe from it and then resubscribe using your newsletter email. Or if it's like sometimes
Smart.
the same company is like sending you important emails and like less important emails, you can create filter rules like, okay, if it comes from newsletters at abccompany.com, then filter it to my newsletters folder. If it comes from important updates at abccompany.com, then leave it in my inbox or start.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really, I never even thought to do that. That is a really smart idea. Now, what's your view on doing like the unsubscribe? Like, do you ever go through, sorry, he is driving me nuts. Do you ever go through and like unsubscribe from emails all the time? I'm gonna go on mute while you talk about this, but like going through, picking a day once a month or something to unsubscribe from stuff that you don't use. Is
Yeah.
that good practice? Because I love doing that. That is so satisfying to me.
Yeah, I don't pick a specific day to do it. It's just whenever things are overwhelming, or I won't even say overwhelming. I would say, um, like I did kind of a spring cleaning or
Mhm.
a New Year's kind of thing where I went through all the emails in my newsletters folder, and then I unsubscribed from all the ones I haven't been looking at all within the last couple of months.
Yeah.
And then pretty frequently, like if you sign up for a new software subscription, they'll send you some of their newsletter emails, and like sometimes I want them and most of the time I don't. So I
Yeah.
have a policy. So for the very first email they send me, I'll just like go straight to the unsubscribe. And then if I
Mhm.
actually want it, then I'll create the filter rule right away to just filter it to my newsletters folder.
That is so good.
Yeah.
You really do have so many good tips. You're amazing.
I
I
try.
just have to say in the chat on YouTube, Julie is saying that, not to brag, but when she started her new role, she committed to ending her week with a 0 inbox. So
Hmm.
she assigns my emails as tasks every day so they don't linger. Julie, that is brilliant.
Hmm.
I also will have to just do a little toot toot of my own horn, because I also make my inbox is almost always at 0. If it's not at 0, it's at like 1, because I hate that little red notification. Like that drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And I am actually so with my, and that's for my work email, but for my personal email, I am like a marketer's like worst nightmare when they're looking at open rates, because I will open every single email just to clear out my inbox.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
and on the weekends, I usually won't look through them, but on Monday morning, I'll pop in there and I'll just like open up the email app and I like just down arrow through all of them. And so they all get marked as red. So I
Yeah.
apologize to every company that I am skewing your open rates.
Yeah. Oh man, okay. That is so funny because like being a marketer, you kind of see it from both sides of the equation, like as a consumer of content and also as a producer of content.
Yeah,
Uh, like
I
I
know.
have
I
several
feel bad, but I gotta do what I gotta do.
like I use Proton Mail as opposed to Gmail, and I have like all kinds of like privacy apps and like tracking blockers on my email, so nobody knows whether or not I've opened or read an email. So I'm
I
like,
do
I'm sure
always
it's
think of
doing
that. I'm
all of
like,
the
man, they're gonna
results.
email me again because I just opened this.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Now, let's see. Let's let's shift gears a little bit from email and time scheduling. But how can we? how do I want to put this? Like how do you define what is manageable for you? Like what are some tips on making your workload more manageable and those types of things? Do you have any tips about that?
Yeah, I think it's easy to kind of fall into this trap of like working all day, all the time,
It
or
is.
none of the day and none of the time,
It's
depending on
hard.
what it
Working
is.
from home is tough. That's a tough
Yeah,
balance.
yeah.
And like, luckily, I am a work from home pro because I've been doing this since before pandemic times.
Hmm.
And so, like, this is old hat for me. But I know
Yeah.
that a lot of people have a really hard time doing that shift. There's been a lot of like blurring of the lines between work and home, and I know that
Mhm.
that is definitely contributing to a lot of burnout. So
Mhm.
yeah, sorry, didn't mean to didn't mean to derail you. Go ahead.
No, that's perfect, and I think that describes the way a lot of people are feeling. They're like, "How it okay?" Because typically in the before times, or at least for most people, um, you have a very clear separation. Like you physically leave your house to do work, and then you physically leave your work at the office.
Mhm.
Um, but when you're doing some kind of work from home arrangement, and it gets even blurrier if you're like working for yourself.
Yeah.
Um, you're at home all day, so and you're doing work, so like how do you separate the two of those things and make sure that work isn't bleeding into your all important Netflix time? uh
Brilliant.
yeah, so what I do is like I literally force myself into a traditional schedule. um and so like I work from 9 a.m. to noon, and then I take a break to like do other things like eat probably, or exercise
Maybe,
maybe.
I guess.
Yeah, I guess. And then I work again from like 2 to 4:30ish, and then take a short break, and then keep going until 6 p.m.
Mhm,
Um, and so I don't like before noon, I typically don't even turn my phone on unless I have to.
mhm.
Um, and that helps me stay focused quite a bit. And then during my break hours, I try to like actually force myself to cut off the working time at least like 10 to 20 minutes after 12,
Yeah.
unless I have like some kind of meeting. Um,
The meetings can make it hard. I know. I know.
yeah, I try not to schedule any meetings like during that time, and then I try not to schedule any like I try not to schedule anything with my friends or family during the working hours. So
Yeah,
like,
that's
that
smart.
works. That works 90% of the time, I would say. Like sometimes it's like there's only so many hours you could choose from, but and if you're willing to make the trade-off to okay,
Mhm.
well, today I'll actually do something during my typical like break time, but like at least as long as 90% of the time those two things don't get mixed up, um it doesn't really lead to any burnout at all. And then you know what times of the day you're supposed to be working, so you could so then you know, okay, I'm supposed to be in work mode, and you
Mhm.
know what times of the day you're not supposed to be working. So if you catch yourself like working after your cutoff time, then you gotta just keep telling yourself, I have to take breaks. Like as a human being,
Yeah.
it is just literally not healthy or sustainable for me to work all day, and it's actually
Yeah.
going to make me less effective if I
Mhm.
try to keep working and working and working. Like there has to be a balance between this and everything else that I'm doing. So
Yeah.
if you just keep telling yourself that, then eventually your brain will calm down and just say, well, we know we have our set working times the next day, so just push it off till 9 a.m.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. And yeah, Katie's making a good point, just time blocking. And I
Mm.
think it's definitely hard to start doing that, especially
Mhm.
if you haven't really been doing that. Like I am super guilty of not doing that. I
Mhm.
will look at Slack on my phone during the ad on Hulu at night.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a challenge to get started doing that, but it's kind of like a muscle, right? Like once you start working it, it gets easier and easier because you've practiced it and you're in the habit of doing it and staying consistent with that schedule. So that's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah, it's that, and you kind of have to force physical limits on yourself as well. So I've turned off like all of the notifications on my phone.
I have been toying with that. I can't say that I do it all the time because I don't, but I've been toying with the idea of doing that. And I usually, like on Saturdays during the day when I'm with my son, I will not do any work things because this is my special time with him. So like it's definitely, yeah, like turning off the notifications. I do that on vacation too. That is my hard stop that I will always do. As soon as I'm on vacation mode, my Gmail notifications turn off and my Slack notifications turn off.
That's
And
good.
I'm not talking to you. If you need me, too bad. So
Yeah. Yeah, like I don't even have the Slack app on my phone. Like I've deleted
wow,
like all of the
you're
apps.
amazing.
Even with Slack, like how it sends you email notifications, I go into Slack and like every time I join a new workspace, I turn that off.
Yeah.
And then I just like filter everything that comes from Slack to like my newsletter email. Like I'll check it when I see it.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, that helps too because and like sometimes like I'm tempted to download an app. Like I'm using Airtable to like manage all of my spreadsheets and stuff. It's like it would be so convenient if I could just have the app on my phone. I'm like, no, we're only logging into that from the computer.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think I have to just practice my discipline. You are so disciplined. I'm blown away by this. You are
Yeah,
incredible.
don't even rely on willpower. Just make the decision like far up front, and then just don't do any work stuff on your phone. That's like the easiest distinction.
And that's a tough one. That's a tough
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Man. I know we're almost out of time. You were right. Guys, before we went live, oh, what's wrong? You're okay. Oh, geez. Before we went live, I was saying if we don't have enough to talk about, it's okay. But man, we have a lot to talk about.
I could
I'm
go
gonna
on
have
for
to go
hours.
mute. We are almost out of time. So, Kierra, if there is anything that you want to plug, please do so now. I'm gonna just go mute for just a sec. So you go ahead, go for it.
Sure. Well, I have my company Forward Launch, and I just recently started a podcast helping get the insights from marketers at business to business software startups. So if you know anybody or you or you happen to be part of that demographic, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or anywhere else. And I'd be happy to get more guests on my podcast. Always exciting.
Awesome. Yeah, and I just sent your LinkedIn around in the chat so anybody can go ahead and connect with you there. And just one last thing, Julie is wondering, what is your astrological sign? There must be something about it, right?
Yeah, weirdly enough, I'm actually a Libra. I can never understand it. But I guess my birthday is somewhere like really close
Oh,
to
you're like on a
November, but
cusp.
not quite. So maybe that's why I get some of the hard charging. Like I don't remember what the sign for November is, but I feel like I'm a little
Oh,
bit
like a
closer to
Scorpio?
that.
Oh man. And do you have a Twitter as well?
um No, I
No.
really just I do LinkedIn and email,
Okay.
and then if anybody ever wants to set up a meeting with me, I give out my scheduling app,
Okay.
which is the last productivity tip. Like never do back and forth messaging. Just
We'll
give
have
out
to,
your
yeah.
scheduling app link.
Yeah,
Saves
that's
so much
something Kate
time.
taught me for
Yeah.
sure. Grab a time on my calendar because the back and forth, or what Kate actually taught me. So Kate, you know what? You had a lot better productivity tips than you think you do. But
Hmm.
she always says when booking meetings to just suggest a day and a time and then send a calendar invite. If they can't do it, then they can suggest a new time. But otherwise, I've found 95% of the time people just say okay and they accept. So
Yeah. Even better, like if you're on a call with somebody and you need to set up the next call.
oh, always do it on the call.
Yes.
Definitely. Yes, that is like the number one cardinal rule for sure. Awesome. Well, we are just about out of time. Kierra, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I have had a blast chatting with you. These were really great tips. And thank you again for joining
Yeah,
us. We really appreciate it.
super appreciate it. Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, guys. I don't know what next week's session is, so tune in and find out because it's a surprise.